Hi, this is Irish Eyes True Crime.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Irish Eyes True Crime. Today I want to talk about the data that was recovered from Nicola Bulley's Fitbit. This is the information given by Detective Constable Keith Greenhalgh. On the 27th of January 2023, Nikki was wearing a Fitbit Versa 4 watch that has the ability to count steps, measure heart rate and blood oxygen saturation. The measurement of heart rate and blood oxygen saturation is achieved by shining different coloured lights into the skin and measuring the returning light. These watches are not equivalent to the type of medical equipment that would monitor your heart rate or blood oxygen saturation in an NHS hospital. Furthermore, these watches are designed to provide information to a person who is alive regarding their physiological status. These watches were neither intended to assist in the diagnosis of death nor the timing of death. Google has provided considerable assistance in trying to understand the functioning of these watches to allow some interpretation of the data. In respect of both heart rate and oxygen saturation, extremes of temperature in either the environment or a person will affect readings, as will any water flow passing between the watch and the wrist. DC Keith Greenhalgh found that when the watch was attached to an inanimate object in still water, no heart rate could be obtained. However, a heart rate could be generated with the watch attached to an inanimate object if water flow around the watch was created. This explains the continued heart rate monitoring of the Fitbit watch after the point that Nikki was known to be missing and in the water. At 9:22 a.m., there was a significant spike in the heart rate, with a substantially increased heart rate being a feature of cold water shock. Subsequent spikes were noted, but the Fitbit Versa 4 also monitors the reliability of data with confidence levels of 0 to 3. Consequently, although there are heart rate elevations after 9:33, this is when Nikki was in the water, and the readings are considerably less reliable due to the temperature of the water and the cooling effect on Nikki's skin and the interference with readings as water passed between the watch and the wrist. DC Greenhalgh explained that Nikki's Fitbit recorded steps in 15-minute segments, and on the 27th of January 2023, between 8 a.m. and 9:30 a.m., Nikki's Fitbit recorded 4,548 steps. Between 9:15 a.m. and 9:30 a.m., Nikki's step count was 273 steps, a substantial reduction from the previous hour and 15 minutes, where she had averaged 855 steps for each 15-minute period. There were no further steps recorded on the watch after 9:30 a.m. At 9:20 a.m., Nikki's phone was located by 3 handset pings to be in the area of the bench. At 9:22 a.m., Nikki's watch recorded a significant spike in heart rate of the data series examined for that morning before 9:33 a.m. He told the inquest analysis of her iPhone and Fitbit watch data suggests she very possibly entered the water at 9:22 a.m. on January the 27th. But the inquest heard the Fitbit continued to record heart activity for 8 days before losing power. So let me just start by saying that everything he's basing here is on the assumption that Nicola had went into the water. So I decided to take a look at some research myself, and I didn't want to rely solely on what is on the Fitbit website, as obviously they're not going to tell of things that may be wrong with the watch or anything like that. So I not only got the information from their website, I also looked at reviews of the watch, because the most truth you're going to get is from people that actually have the watch and have experience. So I decided to look up reviews. Now, it took some time to go through a lot of stuff, but what I have found is quite amazing, considering this police officer is meant to have checked into all of the details. So look, I'll come back to you on that after I show you some of the clips.
The design of Versa 4 is virtually identical to its more expensive sibling, Sense 2, which has been released at the same time as Versa 4. There's only one multifunction single button situated on the left side of the casing. Next to the button we got two holes, that's a microphone which is being used for Amazon Alexa Assistant. At the right side of the case we got a speaker, at the back there's an optical sensors array and charging pins to plug with the charging cradle. Versa 4 has 5 ATM water resistant standard and can survive in depths up to 50 meters. Out of curiosity I drop it to the glass of water to see what will happen. So whether you're working out hard and sweating buckets running outside in a rainstorm, or taking the watch into swimming pool or the lake, your Fitbit will survive just fine. Instead, it looks like a typical Fitbit interface, which means it's all primarily about fitness and health tracking, without as much focus put on those interactive smartwatch elements like downloadable apps. The end result: better battery life. As manufacturer claims, you'll get 6+ days of usage from a fully charged 150 mAh battery, even when getting regular smartphone notifications and tracking workouts and activities. Well, for me it lasts only around 3 days, but take into consideration I prefer an always-on display turned on, and this certainly shortens the battery life. However, the full charge of this battery takes me only around 45 minutes, so I'm okay with that. Etc, etc. Sometimes it takes even 2 minutes. I can obviously be impatient and start my exercise without waiting for the GPS signal to lock on, but then I won't have accurate position. Most likely I will end up with a straight line on the map. I can obviously utilize my phone's GPS by starting the exercise from the app, but I don't want to use my phone. I bought Versa 4 to use my built-in GPS. Anyway, the GPS is locked. I'm fast walking again, and this time Versa 4 counted 963 steps again, exactly the same as on my first attempt. Conclusion: step count isn't the strongest point of Versa 4. The GPS locking could be also faster. Also, when I'm looking at the start and endpoints, it shows 2 totally different locations. I hope Fitbit will rectify this with the next firmware updates.
With Fitbit releasing their new generation of fitness trackers and smartwatches this month, I have spent lots of time testing and putting together a review for the now very colorful Inspire 3, the sensor-loaded Sense 2, and now it's time to discuss the new Fitbit Versa 4, which doesn't really add any new exciting features of its own, though there have certainly been a few improvements, though there also have been some troublesome downgrades that have been made here as well. So in this review of the Fitbit Versa 4, we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and ugly. Now, for those of you new to the channel, this is Colin Jenkins with Connect the Watts, battery life, which by the way will generally last you between 5 and 6 days, although if you have the always on display on, that'll drop down around 50% to 2 to 3 days, and it'll be closer to 2 days if you tend to work out outside a lot and utilize the GPS tracking. And since I do, and I turn the brightness all the way to the max settings so it's nice and easy to see outside, the battery has been lasting around 2 days for me, which is pretty decent. The battery is also fairly quick to charge, taking around 12 minutes to get a full day's worth if you're not using that always on display. As with the Versa 3, the Versa 4 is water resistant, rated for 50 meters of depth, so it is perfectly fine to swim with or take into the shower. Moving on, we have an improved Bluetooth and a much larger sync range that has been extended from 9 feet to now 30 feet. So now let's get into the bad. So while I found the accuracy of the GPS and the sleep to be pretty solid, I had a lot less luck with the heart rate tracking during exercise. At rest, or when not doing a tough workout, it seems to do pretty well, but once I start to do a bit more higher intensity exercise, I found the Fitbit Versa 4 to have a bit of a lag, often taking a minute and sometimes even more to catch up to where my heart rate actually was. Now, it's not too bad for lower effort continuous work, but for interval training or harder workouts where your heart rate spikes more, it seems to be pretty unreliable.
Over the last weeks, I've extensively tested the new Fitbit Versa 4 alongside its more expensive brother, the Sense 2. And in this video, we will take a comprehensive look at the heart rate accuracy, sleep tracking performance, GPS tracking, and step counting accuracy of this brand new watch from Fitbit. Now, as always, my videos are not about listing the specs, but instead we will focus on independent and unbiased performance testing of this new Fitbit watch. Hello everyone! For those of you that are new to the channel, my name is Rob and I'm a postdoctoral scientist specializing in biological data analysis. Now, like I said, I'm not gonna list the specs of this watch for you. Now, let's dive into those test results. And let's start off with the heart rate tracking accuracy, since this is probably one of the most important features for people buying a health tracker. Now, I tested this during a total of 18 workout sessions. To test that, I'll compare the heart rate measurements of the Fitbit Versa 4 against the Polar H10 ECG chest strap, which can generally record my heart rate very accurately. We'll start by looking at one of the easiest types of exercises for a watch to track, cycling indoors. And I'll be looking at a total of 4 interval spinning sessions. Now, this involves very little movement or tension on my arms and will therefore produce less noise. And here we can see an overview of that accuracy over several rides. Each dot here is a single heart rate measurement, with on the horizontal axis the value according to the Polar H10 ECG chest strap, and on the vertical axis the value according to the Versa 4. The closer the points are to the blue line, the better the agreement, and the darker black the color, the more dots there are. I would say that the agreement between the Versa 4 and the ECG chest strap is okay, though definitely not amazing. Overall, there are plenty of points close to the blue line, but there's also quite some points away from the blue line. We see especially many points below the blue line. There are some points below the blue line in the middle heart rate range right here, but especially in the higher heart rate range, we see many points below the blue line. You can see this whole blob of points right here below the blue line. But overall, I would say it looks okay. The correlation, this R value up here, is also decent at a value of 0.91. Now, the correlation cannot be higher than 1, so a correlation of 0.91 is quite okay. Now, we can see why that is if we actually look at the individual training sessions. And I'll start by showing you the best matching training session, which is displayed right here, followed by the worst agreeing session that the Versa 4 showed. Now, as I said, this is the best matching training session, and we have along the horizontal axis the time, and my heart rate is along the vertical axis. In blue-green, I plotted my heart rate according to the Polar H10 ECG chest strap, and in red is my heart rate according to the Versa 4. Now, as you can see, the two lines overlap quite okay most of the times, though sometimes still in the higher heart rate ranges, the Versa 4 detects a too low heart rate. And also here in the beginning, it failed to detect a dip in my heart rate. However, overall, this ride doesn't look too terrible. Now, this second example training session right here is the worst matching session. Now, as you can see, for this session, the Versa 4 almost always failed to pick up on the peaks in my heart rate. Only for this first training segment was it able to follow along with my heart rate. However, all the segments after that, it detected a way too low heart rate. So for this session, the Versa 4 was quite unreliable. And for the other training sessions, like this one right here, for instance, it performed somewhere in between, where the mismatch was not terrible, however also not great. However, let's put this into perspective by comparing it to 66 other watches I've tested over the last 2 years. Now, that overview is displayed right here. The correlation value I was talking about before is the metric I'll use for this, and that is displayed along the horizontal axis. And we want that value to be as close to 1 as possible. On the vertical axis, I ordered the watches from worst to best, so the more to the right and the higher a device is, the better is its correlation with the reference device. and I marked the Versa 4 in red right here. And as you can see, the Versa 4 is a medium performing heart rate tracker at best. Now there are worse watches out there, but it's also definitely not doing very well compared to many other watches. However, it's a bit difficult to see because of the sheer number of devices, so let's zoom in. Now that view is displayed right here, where I only show the watches with a correlation of 0.8 or higher. And as you can see, the Versa 4 is close in performance to, for instance, the Sense 2, which is a first indication that these two devices perform very similarly. The Fitbit Charge 5 is actually also quite close in performance. However, as I said, there are many better performing watches out there, including different Huawei watches and especially Apple watches. Interestingly though, the Pixel watch, which is also a watch made by Google, actually performs a lot better for this type of exercise. Overall, I would say that this means that the Fitbit Versa 4 is doing okay-ish when it comes to heart rate tracking for cycling indoors. However, there are many better watches out there, and it definitely has significant issues when it has to detect my peak in heart rate. So let's next take a look at another easy type of exercise for a watch to track, walking outside. Now here are the results for the first walk. Again, in blue-green are the measurements of the chest strap, and in red the Versa 4. As you can see, though there are definitely some deviations, overall the Versa 4 is able to detect the general patterns in my heart rate. So this is looking quite okay, though again I would not say it's looking great. And if we now take a look at the second walk, we actually see quite some more deviations between the Versa 4 and the ECG chest strap. And again, this somehow hints at the Versa 4 performing mediocre at best when it comes to heart rate tracking. However, I actually also took the Versa 4 with me on a hike here in Austria, which is potentially slightly more tricky for the watch, since I quite often use my hands to hold on to different things on the trail, potentially increasing the tension on my wrist. However, this actually doesn't look too terrible and generally conforms to what we saw for walking. It's mostly able to track my heart rate, but it does show significant deviations sometimes. And this is my heart rate for when I descended the mountain, and the Versa 4 actually did quite a lot better, so here it looks quite good, I would say. To make it even more tricky, I also tested the watch on a short interval run. Now for this interval run, we again see something that we also saw for the interval spinning sessions, where with changes in heart rate, the watch really struggles. So mostly at the peaks of my heart rate, but also sometimes at the dips of my heart rate, the watch really struggles to accurately detect my heart rate. It seems that sometimes it detects a too low and sometimes a too high heart rate, but it's definitely not super accurate. Next, let's take a look at an exercise which is generally more challenging, cycling outside. Now, while cycling outdoors, watches tend to shift a lot more on the wrist as well, making accurate heart rate readings much more difficult. To see if this affected the Versa 4, I tested it during a total of 7 bike rides. Now here you can see a similar overview plot to before, but now for biking outside. As you can see, the agreement with the ECG chest strap is downright terrible. There are many points away from the blue line, and especially many below the blue line right here. This means that the Versa 4 detected the wrong heart rate and mostly a too low heart rate a lot of the time. The correlation, this R value up here, is 0.5, and this is also pretty bad. And as before, we can see that in more detail if we actually take a look at some of the bike rides themselves. As you can see, the red line, which represents the Versa 4, detects a much lower heart rate than the ECG chest strap for a large part of the ride. And that is what we see for many bike rides, like this one right here as well. Now for parts of the ride, it does detect a heart rate that is close to the actual heart rate detected by the ECG chest strap. However, it fails to pick up on my higher heart rates for a large part of the ride as well, as you can see right here, but also right here. Now there are also some bike rides like this one right here where it really did terribly and it wasn't able to accurately detect my heart rate for most of the ride. Now this is the most clear example of that. For basically the entire ride, it kept detecting a way too low heart rate, so this is not looking very good for the Versa 4. We can again put this into perspective by looking at many of the other watches I've tested over the last years. Now similar to before, we'll use the correlation with the ECG chest strap as the value on the horizontal axis, and the better the agreement, the more to the top right the device is. As you can see, the Fitbit Versa 4, which is again marked in red, is really not doing very well compared to many other devices when it comes to heart rate tracking for cycling outside. Interestingly, it does about as well again as the Fitbit Sense 2, making me think that the hardware and software on both devices might be very similar. So far, I'm actually not that satisfied with the performance of the Versa 4. And at worst, these exercises represent only medium hard exercises for a watch to track your heart rate. So overall, based on my initial testing, I would conclude that the Fitbit Versa 4 isn't a very good heart rate tracker. It does okay-ish while I'm spinning. However, for most of the other exercises, it doesn't do well at all, and it generally performs similar to the Fitbit Sense 2, which also wasn't that good. Therefore, overall, I'd give the heart rate tracking of the Fitbit Versa 4 2 out of 5 stars. Now, overall, the Fitbit Versa 4 did not impress me. Similar to the Sense 2, it did not really feel like an upgrade compared to previous generations. The heart rate tracking was honestly pretty bad, and the GPS tracking was also quite underwhelming.
Now, these are just a couple of clips I found on YouTube. There's plenty more on it if you want to go and have a look yourselves. I want to read out some reviews that I'm after finding. I hope that I'm not boring you, but I think it's really important that we get to the bottom of this and we show that everything is wrong about this case. First one, Valerie895, 2 months ago. A don't buy for me, as the heart rate recording and activity level tracking seems very inconsistent and inaccurate. I can do a 45-minute circuit-style workout mixing weights and cardio and get only 9 zone minutes, despite being slightly breathless, sweating and feeling my heart pumping faster. Then on occasion I have recorded zone minutes sitting quietly knitting. Walking doesn't register as activity unless I am walking very fast and or uphill. Readings compared to my old Fitbit are vastly different. It is my third Fitbit and might be my last. Reviewed by Chris. This watch is just okay. It has a tendency to stop while I am exercising. The only reason I bought the watch was for this purpose. Reviewed by Clint. I've been wearing Fitbits since 2015. Although the technology progressed, the quality seems to regress. I got this one after the heart rate monitor on my second Versa 2 stopped working after 1.5 years. The first Versa just died altogether after 10 months, but I gave it another shot because of the warranty. I was excited about the oxygen saturation monitor and GPS on the Versa 4. But super disappointed when the O2 stopped working after 2 days. On the morning that I planned to return it, the features started working again, but the heart rate monitor is horribly inaccurate. I've tried every conceivable position on my wrist, arm, but whether I go from walking to jogging to running or from warm-up, high intensity, the BPM doesn't change. That will be my last Fitbit. I just hope it lasts long enough for me to find a suitable fitness tracker. Ross Smith. Overall good except the heart rate tracker, which is important. Heart rate 3 out of 10. This is not good and I am quite disappointed with. During the day at work and at home it seems to be fine. This is good for capturing my resting heart rate, which I am interested in, but during workouts it's basically useless. I have worked out 3 times with it since I got it, and it is just wildly inaccurate. I bought this thing specifically so I could track my workout, hoping because Fitbit is a well-known brand that it would do this specific thing well, and it does not. Jenna, the watch is very comfortable given its size and it's more advanced than the last model. However, it is still very laggy and has a slow response time. For the price, you might as well get a Samsung watch. Not a happy camper. Francisco M. The Fitbit was not accurate in steps or calories and we had to return it. My wife was not happy with it. Troman. Okay, but battery life goes way down after short use. When I got it, the battery lasted about a week, and a month later I have to charge it every other day. Have trouble also getting info out of the Fitbit, like steps for the day. Sometimes it's easy, other days it won't give me the info. This is my third Fitbit in 5 years. I'm hoping this will last longer than the other 2. Counting steps. RT60. The watch does what it's supposed to do, easy to use, but for some reason there are times when it actually loses time and will be 20 to 30 minutes off. It then has to be resynced. There is so many other reviews like this. I couldn't possibly put them all into this video. Bluetooth unsyncing with the phone, that's a big one. The heart rate, there's so many ones about the heart rate not right. The step counting not right. Losing time. Others are saying that their straps aren't great. They lose the watch because of the straps. Others are saying that they only barely bump off something and the screen could break. And we know Nicola's watch unsynced from the phone, so she was possibly having trouble with it as well. I mean, we don't even know. She could have even been one of the people that complained about it on the reviews. So I have a few questions here, a few important questions. How is it that DC Keith Greenhalgh was able to say that Nicola had no steps after 9:30? How can he give this as 100% accuracy when these watches have been known to just stop recording or have missing time? DC Greenhalgh also said that he tested on inanimate objects and it provided similar results when there was movement in water as a heartbeat. He said it could be a possible explanation for Nicola's Fitbit continuing to provide heart rate output sporadically until February the 4th. We know from Fitbit's own website that unless you turn on the lock with the swim mode, it will continue to record activity while swimming. It therefore cannot guarantee that Nicola wasn't alive till at least February 4th or after it. It's still basing it on the assumption that Nicola had went into the water. I just want to read again where DC Keith Greenhalgh had said about 9:22. He said, at 9:22 a.m. there was a significant spike in the heart rate, with a substantial increased heart rate being a feature of cold water shock. Subsequent spikes were noted, but the Fitbit Versa 4 also monitors the reliability of data with confidence levels of 0 to 3. Consequently, although there are heart rate elevations after 9:33, this is when Nikki was in the water and the readings are considerably less reliable due to the temperature of the water, the cooling effect on Nikki's skin, and the interference with the readings as the water passed between the watch and the wrist. Now, what I want to know is, how could they possibly put the time of death of a person down to a watch that has hundreds of complaints about the reliability of the heart rate monitor? Have any of you heard of this before? I'm sorry. I was so angry I had to leave the computer for a few minutes. It's bad enough that DC Greenhalgh didn't do his due diligence, but come on, a coroner given a time of death on a Fitbit watch that doesn't even work properly. And if they think this is going to go away, it's not going to go away. This is going to be known for a long, long, long time. An absolute circus performance. And to think poor Nicola, she could have been abducted. It is a possibility. She could have been tied up, gagged, and carried away from that scene. Also explaining why steps mightn't have been counted. Then discounting 2 witnesses' statements that said they heard screams just because it was later than they thought Nicola had went into the water due to the Fitbit. The dodgy Fitbit that doesn't even count heart rate accurately. And we're also supposed to believe that Nicola fell in where them rocks were, travelled over a mile down the river, over a weir, across more rocks, other snags in the river, and her Fitbit wasn't damaged. The strap didn't come off because we know they have dodgy straps, and all of that without any damage to the watch and recoverable data. Also, I found this on the Fitbit website. Fitbit, on the other hand, recommends a minimum ambient operating temperature no colder than 14 degrees Fahrenheit for its wellness wearables, which should maintain better temperature control based on continuous contact with your skin. The non-operating temperature is 14 degrees down to -4 degrees. So we're supposed to believe that it withstood all of that for 23 days. Also, the Fitbit website states that data is only stored for 7 days on the device. But we're supposed to believe that DC Greenhalgh got 8 or 9 days worth of data from the Fitbit. Also, something else I found interesting on the Fitbit website is the fact that the Fitbit device gives off a Bluetooth signal constantly. And not only does it have a Find My Phone app, it also has a Find My Fitbit app. The app can find a Fitbit up to 100 feet away, depending on where your Fitbit is hiding and your surroundings. The distance might be shorter. The signal from a Fitbit can travel through walls, floors, and ceilings. This means you might get a warm or hot signal in one room in your house, but your lost Fitbit could be in the room right next to it, above it, or below it. Look in all locations, to your left, right, up and down, when the indicator says warm and hot. To find your Fitbit, you don't even need your original phone that's synced to it to find it. It gives off a Bluetooth signal, so any phone or tablet can be used to find it. Although if the battery is dead on the Fitbit watch, it won't give off the signal. So I haven't heard of any of the police having went up and down the banks with a phone trying to find that signal of Nicola's phone if they thought she was stuck in the reeds. Especially now that we know her watch was still going on till the 4th of February. So they should have been able to find her if she was in the reeds. But hey, that's just another thing that they didn't bother their holes checking into. Or maybe they didn't want to anyway. I really think that Nicola has been let down so much. I can't believe it, really. I'm totally shocked. Especially, it was only when I was putting all this together that you realise this. How much she's been let down. And to think that there's probably a murderer going around out there. And they're probably going to do it again. Something else I found out today, as I'm recording, a fellow YouTuber I've got to know on YouTube put out a video today, and I really think that you need to watch it after this, because all of this is starting to make sense now. How Nicola has been failed, and that somebody is getting away with something. I need you to go over and look at Pandora's Box and the video she put out today about the phone. And it's really important. I'll leave a link in the description box. I'm going to leave this here now and let you see what you think of all of this, because I'm totally shocked. I don't know what way you're going to be. I'm looking forward to seeing the comments and see what you think about it, but I can't believe that a coroner was able to give a time of death based on something like that. So I'm going to say goodbye for now. Be safe, be happy. Please give this a like when it goes out, because for other people to see it, it needs to get out in the algorithm. So if it gets likes straight away when it goes out, it helps them push it out more for more people to see it. And people do need to see this. Like, people could be in danger. So please like, share, and subscribe. As sharing is caring. Thank you. Everything in this video is fair use.
Wow.